We tend to think of international recognition as a one-way street. Once a country gets that official nod from another, that stamp of approval, we kind of assume the deal is done. It's final, locked in. But what if it isn't?
Well, that feeling, that sense that recognition is permanent, it's probably one of the biggest misconceptions in international relations. The truth is that official stamp can absolutely be taken back. And that's where we get into the really fascinating world of derecognition.
All right, so how are we going to break this all down? First, we'll get into what undoing recognition actually means. Then, and this is important, we'll clarify what it isn't. After that, we'll dig into the juicy stuff, why states even do this, we'll look at the real-world aftermath, and then we'll wrap up by busting some of the biggest myths out there. So let's dive right in. What are we really talking about when a state decides to reverse course?
It's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. Derecognition is the formal act of one state saying to another, hey, you know that recognition we gave you? We're taking it back. We no longer see you as a legitimate state or government. It's a major political U-turn.
So how is this even possible?
Well, it all comes down to the fact that there's no global law that locks recognition in place forever. It's a sovereign decision. Every single state decides for itself who it's going to recognize and on what terms. This quote just nails it, right? Think about it this way. Recognition isn't some legally binding contract with no escape clause. It's more like a political statement, a declaration of how you see the world right now. And as we all know, politics can change in a heartbeat. And this flexibility, it is completely intentional. Foreign policy has to be able to adapt. States make these calls based on their own political judgment, their own strategic interests, and, of course, when there are huge changes happening on the ground. An ally that makes sense today might be a huge headache tomorrow.
Okay, now this is super important. To really get what derecognition is, we've got to be crystal clear on what it isn't. It gets confused with other diplomatic moves all the time, so let's draw some sharp lines in the sand.
This table lays out the nuances perfectly. Derecognition is a total reversal, a fundamental change in how you view another state's status. That's way different from non-recognition, which is just deciding not to recognize them in the first place. And it's also not the same as a diplomatic break. You can still officially recognize a country's government, but be so angry at them that you recall your ambassador and shut down the embassy. The recognition is still there, but the relationship is on ice. And this is where it gets really interesting. These are all separate tools in the diplomatic toolbox. A state could theoretically derecognize another, but still keep some quiet, informal channels open, for practical reasons. It's not always about slamming the door completely shut. Okay, that brings us to the big question. What actually pushes a country to take such a dramatic step? What are the real triggers here?
It's almost never just one thing. A lot of the time, it's a huge event, like a violent coup that makes you ask, is this really the legitimate government anymore? Or maybe the state you recognize breaks a key promise it made. It can also happen when two different groups claim to be the one true government. Or, simply when a nation's bigger foreign policy goals and alliances just completely change. But, and this is so important, none of these things automatically trigger derecognition. Even after a coup or a major policy shift, the decision to actually pull the plug on recognition is always a very deliberate, very strategic, and highly calculated political choice. This is where we need to separate the world of diplomacy from, physical reality. When that recognition gets withdrawn, what actually happens? What are the real consequences? This comparison really gets to the heart of it. What changes is all the official stuff, the formal relationship. Embassies might close, treaties could be put on hold, and the country's position in the world definitely takes a hit. But what doesn't change is the reality on the ground. The government that was derecognized doesn't just suddenly lose control of its land. Its people don't disappear, and its day-to-day governance keeps on going. So yeah, the fallout is mostly diplomatic and legal. The official phone lines get cut, the status of treaties gets messy, and for sure, that state's standing in the international community is weakened. Let's just say it one more time, loud and clear. Withdrawing recognition is a powerful symbolic and political statement, but it does not change the facts on the ground. It doesn't magically erase a state or a government's actual existence. All right, to round this all out, let's play a little game of Mythbusters and tackle some of the most common fictions that swirl around this topic. First up, the big one, which we've already hit on. The idea that derecognition is like hitting a delete button on a country. The reality? Nope, it's a change in diplomatic status, not an act of erasure. Myth number 2.
that you need to get some kind of permission slip from the UN or some other big international body. You absolutely do not. Just like giving recognition is a country's own choice, taking it away is too. It's a decision made by one state about another. Period.
And finally, there's the domino effect myth. The idea that if one major power derecognizes a country, everyone else has to follow suit. That's just not how it works. Every other nation on Earth is going to look at that situation and make its own independent call based on its own interests. So, if you remember just one thing from all this, let it be this. Recognition isn't some permanent, legally sealed status. It's a fluid political tool. It can be given and it can be taken away, all depending on the constantly shifting chessboard of global politics. And all of this leaves us with a much bigger, much deeper question to chew on. If that external stamp of approval is so political and so reversible, what is it that truly makes a state real on the world stage? Now that is something worth thinking about.